other side of town. It wouldn't let me in till Friday of next week. Thus, I reserved a hotel in the Highlands. Since it was winter, the price was reasonable. I scheduled my employment for the following week and bided my time for my marriage to break down. On Wednesday and Thursday, we stayed apart from one another. I lived in my own room, so it was quite simple. Before closing on Thursday night, I printed and signed every letter, including the expense checks. I sat at the kitchen table Friday morning, waiting for Marge to come down the stairs. She carried a luggage bag into the kitchen. She walked over to greet me with a broad smile on her face and her arms extended in an embrace. "I knew you would accept this and be here to see me off," she remarked. "I'm hoping you're just as eager as I am." I stuck out my hand, keeping her from getting closer to me, and said, "I'm here to check if you're going for it. I'll leave the house and never return back if that's the case. Are you following?" She yelled out at me, obviously angry. "Dan, I'll be waiting for you here on Sunday at 4. This is the proper course for our marriage. I'm going to forbid having sex for a month if you're not here." To be honest, I chuckled at her illusions. "You're not paying attention. I'll impose a lifetime ban if you do this. I'm going to be home at 7 o'clock. Our marriage will be the stuff of history if you are not here." I wasted the entire day at work. I went to meet a lawyer after leaving work early. He finished all the documentation, and I gave him the bank statements that attested to my division of all the money in half. We decided that the papers would be served to my wife at my former residence on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. I was texting with someone I didn't know as I was leaving the attorney's office. In the picture, my wife was at the front desk of a hotel I didn't recognize. A man was holding her hand. "It's time for you to turn into a cuckold weakling," said the message. A lawyer I presented it to copied it. I sent a bunch of letters right away after going to the post office. Then he went back to his old house and packed a week's worth of supplies. After loading the remaining items into my car, I headed to a storage facility where I hired a locker for a week and stored everything I owned. I took a car to a motel in the Highlands from there. I went to a bar after checking in and started to grieve for my marriage's demise. I therefore felt the warmth of my bourbon on the rocks and the warmth of the large open fire as the rain pattered off the large window. I received the first message on my phone. When her second message arrived, I grinned and wondered whether she truly believed that I would end up becoming her cuckold. Was I truly so incomprehensible to her? I got a message a little while later from the same unidentified number that sent me the picture on Friday. "Hello Dan, this is Mel. How come you're not here for Marge? She even says your belongings are missing from the house because she is so perplexed." 5 minutes after I disregarded the message, I received a call from the same number. I answered the phone. "Mel, what do you want?" She was not prepared for me to be so abrupt and to stammer a little before gathering myself. "Dan, your spouse is here, waiting for you to return her to her." "How? Are you spending your time?" "That foolish bitch doesn't have anything back that I need or desire," I said. "We're done," I informed her. "If she does it. We are finished, she did it. Please don't call back." I then hung up the phone. The next instant, a different number called. "Dan, this is Jackie," the caller said this time. "When you write 'we're done,' what do you mean?" I chuckled. "How do you interpret this?" Jackie lost her temper. "Dan, I have no idea what that may mean," she added. I was powerless to resist. I hung up, turned off the phone, and added, "She'll find out tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning." I answered the phone. As soon as the attorney received the documents, she was expected to give me a call. My phone was inundated with voice messages as soon as I switched it on. There were at least 40 SMS, and there were no empty voicemails. I perused them. They all came from Jackie, Mel, or Marge. The last text was sent 15 minutes ago, yet the voicemail was left almost a full hour ago. Though I left the voicemail so she couldn't be reached, I erased all of the texts. 8:05 a.m. My attorney gave me a call. When I replied, he informed me that she had received the documents at precisely 8:01 in the morning. She was in the residence with 2 other women. The bailiff was naturally forced to resist their attempts to make him return the documents, claiming that she had to accept them. In a few minutes, something will occur. I hung up after thanking him. Upon executing this action, 3 messages were received. Mal was the source of the first. "You are a cold-blooded bastard." I banned her number but chose to ignore it. The next message, of course, was from Jackie. "Are you just another extinct species?" "Yes," I said, and I blocked her number. Marge sent the last one. "Why, Dan?" "I thought you were cool with this," it said. I couldn't contain my laughter. I retorted, "This will be the end of our marriage. I have made it very clear that I do not agree with your plans. Get legal counsel, and let's dissolve this union." I got out of my room to have breakfast. The breakfast was excellent, and the hotel was unexpectedly busy. My phone rang just as I was almost done with my coffee. It wasn't Marge when I looked at the screen, though I was expecting her. My mother was there. "Good morning, Mom," I said. "How are you spending your day?" The response was not very helpful. "How do you feel? Do you think I'll agree to you splitting up with your wife? Regain control and return to your spouse. She won't do it too frequently, but you need her." I was taken aback. I thought my mother would realize that what she had done could not be tolerated. "You know she went away for the weekend to swindle me," I said. "Did she tell you that this was something she planned to do on a daily basis? You are not the woman who brought me up with a moral compass and self-respect if you believe I can tolerate this. I mean, this is the 21st century," she joked. I ended the call. I will not tolerate this foolishness. I received a ton of messages from various folks. The messages were essentially identical. Everyone advised me to accept what she did, then head back home. I just disabled the phone numbers. I drove to the storage facility and my new apartment at the end of the week after checking out of the hotel. I was not excited about going to work on Monday. I was unavailable the previous week. But by Monday, everyone will be aware of my location. I called my supervisor and told him what had transpired since I was feeling uneasy. He was astounded at what Marge had done as well as the sheer number of individuals attempting to persuade me to accept it. He granted my request to be able to work from home. He contacted me at 10 a.m. on Monday and said, "This is ridiculous every few minutes, Marge. Your mom and 2 or 3 other people phone and try to talk to you. They want your address when we tell them you work from home. Now that Marge and your mother are in the waiting area, their refusal to leave the front desk is essentially creating problems. You have to take action, and you must act quickly." I gave my mother a call. "Where the hell are you?" was her quick reply. "Why haven't you withdrawn these divorce papers yet, and why are you neglecting your wife?" I inhaled deeply. These papers won't be cancelled. I never want to be with my soon-to-be ex-wife again, and I won't. I'm going to apply for a restraining order and work for my new house. "You think that's going to stop me?" she said, laughing. I laughed in return. "Most likely not, but you will have to eat the prison food, so, yeah." I hung up to give my attorney a call. I gave him my boss's number and told him the entire incident. My mother and wife received restraining orders 2 hours later, forbidding them from approaching my new house and place of employment within 500 yards. My attorney requested that my address remain confidential. I had no choice but to ban them because they were contacting me nonstop, but at least this made things in the office more peaceful. Our court date was 3 months later. Among the attorneys, Marge discovered a shark who was plotting to sabotage the divorce. Her initial strategy was claiming that her actions were reasonable and that the weekend getaway was not intended for sexual purposes. That theory was destroyed by the photo and caption, but they made us verify the image and even pinpoint its location. Fortunately, one of my lawyer's employees recognized the hotel, and we were able to verify the time and photo using hotel surveillance footage. We didn't buy this magazine and instead liked the ones with more gossip. I looked up the release date, and it was more than a year ago. I noticed that she was giving me a low lip bow. She turned back to the screen when I glanced at her. My response shocked her beyond belief. This was not encouraging. I pulled back the folded page and opened it to the designated page. What a mess I was in was evident from the headline. The message was to overpower your partner if your marriage was falling apart. I shouted, "No, no way," as I hurled the magazine across the table and it landed on Marge's keyboard. "Will you not read this?" she begged, turning to face me. Studies have been done on its operation, and the outcomes were astounding. According to intention of seeking treatment, she might have ended up in hell. The court opened the case, and Marge's attorney got to work making his points. He claimed that we were a happy married couple, but everyone that knows me believes that I'm seriously in error. He summoned my sister, my mother, and a number of current and past acquaintances to the platform. All of them gave testimony regarding our marriage, pleading with the judge to either reject the divorce or, at least, require me to attend marital counseling and give me guidance on how to start the reconciliation process. Then Marge got to her feet and pleaded with the judge. "Your Honor, my spouse and I have been together for a very long time," she said. "We made the ideal pair. This is acknowledged by both of our families, and we will give the kids a secure and caring environment. Many kids. Yes, I did make a grave error by listening to people that I thought were my friends. However, I now see that all they really wanted was for me to look like them. Please put an end to this divorce and get us both counseling. Let me tell you what steps I have done to make sure this never happens again, and the love I have for him and him alone. I know that if Dan had listened to me, his mother, and all of our friends, he would have understood what I did to make amends. Your Honor, please don't let this divorce go through. Our marriage will be solid and long-lasting if I can get him to come back to me." My mother leaned over and gave her a gentle hug as she sat down, and then she turned to face me with a triumphant smile. My attorney looked at me and shrugged. "He will now exert pressure on you," I inquired. "Can I address the court as well?" My attorney nodded in response, got up, and spoke to the judge. My client would also like to address the court, Your Honor. With a nod, the judge said, Mr. Simpson, your wife made a very sincere and passionate plea to this court. I have rarely seen or heard such love and conviction, even in contentious divorces. I would like you to consider what you are doing. I think it's my responsibility to try to make it happen, because this woman genuinely thinks you two have a future together. God, I thought to myself, the entire world is against me. All right. Shut up, I want to get off. Glancing at the judge, I said, Your Honor, she converted for her own self-interest. However, she ruined my feelings for her when she pulled off her little prank. I will tell them so if you make me visit a counselor without my choice. I'll also inform them that there is no chance of reconciliation. I'm aware that my wife will believe that I'll need to take additional time off if you make us reconcile. I can assure you today that it will not occur. Just so you know, I'm relocating out of state. My mother's head turned to face me as soon as I said this, and her eyes were burning brightly. And tomorrow I'm on a plane to a new place. I refuse to be forced back into a marriage, and you cannot and will not do so. I'll just end the divorce if you ask for counseling. I don't think I'll ever want to remarry. Divorce is therefore only a formality in law. You cannot make me live with my ex-wife in the same home, or make me attend counseling if I do this. And regardless of how this hearing turns out, she is my ex-wife. Furthermore, you cannot make me love her. Marge will be left with a house, and no support if I decide to back out of the divorce. Thus, Your Honor, what will happen? My mother and Marge were crying by now, and Marge's attorney requested a little pause so he could talk with his client. After a half-hour break, the court told my attorney to come to his office. I sat at the table staring around the room, with nothing to do. While people milled about, a very distraught Marge sat in the back, speaking quietly with her attorney. My attorney has returned. The magistrate is really upset with you. You should never show up in his court again, he told you. He will issue a counseling order if Marge requests it. He cannot and will not stop you, though, if you decide to call off the divorce. He urged you to consider your choices carefully, but in the end, it is up to you. The court clerk emerged as he was about to finish and walked up to Marge's attorney. After their conversation, he proceeded to the judge. He emerged after 10 or so minutes and walked over to Marge. She nodded and buried her head in her hands as he muttered something to her. I could see the rage on my mother's face as she turned to confront me. The attorney grabbed her arm and firmly told her not to do this, Mrs. Simpson, as she started to get up from her chair. You won't benefit from it. The session got back underway when the judge entered the room again. The magistrate gave me a look. You have stated your position rather clearly, Mr. Simpson. You will essentially leave your wife penniless by renting a house if I require therapy. That would be the worst potential consequence out of all of them. I thus decline to grant your request for counseling, Mrs. Simpson, for your own sake. Based on the financial situation that your attorney has described, I am approving your request for a divorce. She basically got the most of the savings. I was indifferent. I had no restrictions. As soon as I heard the hammer fall, I fled the courtroom and kept everyone away from me. I made reservations at the airport hotel and had a flight leaving at 6 the next morning. All of my belongings were in my new apartment. My goal was to get out of town as fast as I could to avoid being discovered. I was dropped up at the hotel by taxi, and I stayed there all night eating room service for dinner. No one could find me or reach me because my old phone number had been disconnected for a long time, but I knew my mother would be searching the entire city for me. She had no intention of giving it up. I boarded the plane at 5:30 in the morning, having left the hotel at 4. I had a whole new life ahead of me. It had been 6 years since that day in court. As my new position developed, I was promoted to senior manager of the engineering division. I had just gotten done with dinner when someone rang the doorbell. Without checking the peephole, I opened it and noticed my mother and Marge standing in the hallway. I simply observed them. So you won't leave me alone even now? My mother virtually shoved me out the door before they entered my home together. Shutting the door, I trailed behind them. Both took a seat without being asked. Well, Dan, I thought you'd have calmed down by now, my mother said. When you registered to vote in this town 6 weeks ago, that's when we found you. Marge will be moving into this flat after finding a new job in the neighborhood. I'm sure you're miserable without her, but she needs you and you need her. I simply grinned upon hearing the door open. Callie, grinning, stepped into the living room and exclaimed, I'm home, who gave me a stern look, one of her many serious smiles. Who is this? Callie stood with her hands on her hips, staring at the two persons staring at Marge, whose face had turned pale at this point. Meet my mother and my ex-wife, Callie, I said. They were only here for a minute, but it looks like they're going to be departing. Callie pivoted to reveal the conspicuous diminutive crescent on her physique. I watched Marge reach for her mouth. Is this yours? Was all my mother could say. Everything she needed to know was conveyed by my smile. Don't worry, I reassured her. Callie made sure I was content. It's time for you two to return to your life and leave me alone with yours, I said, taking Men Mother by the hand. I'm going to miss you. I turned to Callie after pushing them both out the door. Dinner is prepared. In order to prevent your second chaff from betraying you, please subscribe to our channel. Next all, this narrative pales in comparison to the one that comes next. Don't even consider listening to the next one, if you're younger than 18.